I would say that I had to percolate on that failure thing for a while. And then I said, you know what? If you got to be good at something, I am good at failing, but I'm also good at showing up the next year. So that's the key that has to go with failing is you can't quit when you fail. And so it's just another attempt. It's just another attempt when you keep going back out there. Hi, I'm Epic Bill and I'm a renegade. Woo woo!
Welcome to the Renegade Podcast. Each episode, we set off to better understand what it means to run, to be a runner, to give you the confidence that you can achieve way more than what you believe is possible. We're happy to bring Renegade to you at no cost, no grifting, just conversation with the best guests to help you run, feel, and live just a little bit better. We do have one ask. If you enjoy the Renegade, please subscribe to our show on YouTube. Like, comment, share on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. This helps us out a bit, encourages us that we're on the right path, and helps to grow the Renegade audience. Renegade is proud to be sponsored by Thrive Protein. Power your runs and fuel your endurance with Thrive Protein, the premier Canadian-made supplement brand crafted for endurance athletes. This family-owned brand uses a science-based approach to develop high-quality electrolytes, a carbon electrolyte powder, creatine, vegan protein powders, whey protein, and they are constantly innovating. Recently brought to market EnduraFuel, hydration and fuel all in one. Each serving offers 30 grams of carbs in a 2-to-1 ratio of glucose to fructose. You also get the sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium, replenishing all the elements that you're sweating out during your efforts. It gives your body the energy it needs to perform at its peak. Plus, the lemonade flavor tastes amazing. Thrive is perfect for any athlete chasing any distance. Visit thriveprotein.ca and use the code RENEGADE for 20% off your order. Thrive Protein. Fuel your relentless pursuit of adventure. Most people shy away from the cold, the pain, the seemingly impossible. Bill Bradley, he thrives on it. From climbing Denali in sub-zero temps to conquering Arrowhead 135's brutal Minnesota winters 12 times and counting, his story is about relentless resilience in the face of nature's fiercest tests. If you ever wondered if you're strong enough, tough enough to push your limits, or just want a masterclass in showing up every time you fail, this episode is your blueprint. Bill's journey reveals that failure isn't the end. It's just another start. After losing his fortune, battling depression, Bill discovered that grit isn't born. It's built through deliberate exposure, repetition, and the sheer refusal to quit. He shares how embracing the darkest cold and the hottest heat sharpened not only his endurance, but his heart. You'll discover how training smarter, not harder, keeps him in the game well into his 60s. And a powerful mindset, brainwashing yourself with positivity. This episode is perfect for anyone facing their own battles, whether in running or life. Epic Bill's story inspires the wild, fearless pursuit of what feels impossible. If you're ready to turn setbacks into comebacks and find joy in the struggle, this episode will challenge your limits and remind you another attempt is always worth making. Because if he can survive minus 50 in Denali or 135 miles in Death Valley, maybe, just maybe, we can face what's next. Welcome to the show, Bill. It was Christmas time this year. I'm watching some movies in bed. I throw on the media player and I come across Epic Bill. And I'm like, who is this guy? Like, it was just right there. So I started watching. It was your videos about the Arrowhead 135. Yeah. And I was enthralled. It was just, I could not get enough, Bill.
You're such a stud. You know, I was going to talk about Arrowhead because I'm definitely doing it this next year coming up again, my 13th attempt.
That'll be your 13th attempt. Oh my God.
We never quit. Woo woo.
Well, that's what I love about you, Bill, is the tenacity, the grit, the never quitting. Bill, welcome to the Renegade Podcast. It's really inspiring to have you join us on this episode. You know, when I look at your story, when I came across it watching your video this Christmas, most people, when they hit rock bottom, They tend to stay there. They try to maybe rebuild quietly, if they even rebuild whatsoever. But your rock bottom, you decided to rebuild by running through Death Valley, Minnesota winters, climbing Mount Denali, and along the way failing spectacularly, but learning from it and not giving up. If you could go back to Bill, that version of yourself when everything was against you, what one piece of advice would you give Bill about showing up and suffering and the importance of that?
Yeah, when I was in my lowest low, my dad, because, I went through a bankruptcy, $10 million video chain I'd owned for 20 years and started it with credit cards, as a 23-year-old with credit cards because the bank wouldn't lend me money. And then to have that whole thing go down really fast with Netflix, and then have it when I knew the bankruptcy was coming, and I let and my wife left right before too. I mean, so everything was gone. And my dad would call me every night and check on me. And I remember asking him, I said, Dad, he was a Marine at like 17 years old. I said, you're not normally the type to call every night. But you did back then. I go, why did you do that? He says, Bill, I was doing a suicide check. And I guess I passed. But what I did was when you say like show up and suffer, what I did was I was in such a funk. It'd been like 3 months or so since the bankruptcy. I was back. I went back to the family's business, and was doing construction sales in downtown San Francisco. And I would walk around. My confidence was so down that I would look at my feet when I walked around the financial district. I couldn't even look people in the eyes. And I remember I knew I had to do something about it, man. And that was like, so my buddy the guy I had trained with, and ran with. I had a handful of triathletes that we also did marathons and stuff like that together. And he said to me that, you've been talking about doing a 50 miler for a long time. Well, the perfect one would be tomorrow. And it was that, when you run around Lake Merced over here, I forget what it's called, but yeah, anyway, maybe Helen Putnam, is that it or something? I don't know. But anyway, one of those it's named after a woman who was one of the original ultra runners. And the thing was that I was so, like you were saying, when I was in this low, I mean, my dad was calling because he thought I was suicidal. I go, I wasn't quite that bad, Dad.
He was worried about you.
I know. He goes, you were really depressed, Bill. But it was like I needed something to snap me out of it. So that's when I went down, and and my buddy had said that, and I said, I need to do something, I'll say epic, that was just to snap me out of this funk. I needed to get my confidence back. And when he said that 50 miler, I go, that's exactly what I need. I hadn't done a 50. I had ego about it. I was afraid I wouldn't finish one back in the day. I didn't really know any ultra runners. I only knew triathletes, and we would only go as high as a marathon normally. And then it was like, and so I'd been thinking about that 50 miler, and my ex-wife didn't want me to do one either, because when I wouldn't make my marathon goal, my triathlon goal, I would be, depressed. Like I was trying to qualify for Hawaii, and I never did it. And then I'd always be depressed. And so she goes, I don't want you doing a 50 miler. And so it was like, and my sister had said, after my wife left, she had said, you should do something, that your ex-wife never wanted you to do, or some weird thing like that, which, totally fit when my buddy said this 50 miler. And so I literally, like, that night I went to bed, I'll just tell you a little bit more about it, because it's a pretty crazy story, but I had poison oak on my manly parts at that same time. Yeah, it was like I was, running up on the hills, and where you go to the bathroom, you know,
You got to be careful
and
sometimes.
I know, and I had told my buddy, I said, I don't know if I can, I really want to do this. We were at dinner. I said, I really want to do this 50 miler, but it's tomorrow. And then on top of it, I've had poison oak on my manly parts. And he goes, Bill, I could call my dad for you. We could, my dad on the phone. His dad was my doctor when I was a kid. He was retired like 80-year-old doctor. And I go, okay, let's get your dad on the phone and see what he says. And so he gets his dad on the phone and he goes, okay, Bill, so let me get this right. You want to know what I think what my advice would be. You want to run a 50 miler tomorrow and you have poison oak on your manly parts. Not a good idea, Bill. Not a good idea. So go ahead.
I was going to say, and it sounds like you took his advice. So you took the doctor's advice.
I went to bed that night and I was not going to do it. You know, I wasn't going to do it. And then I literally woke up at like 3 a.m. and it was like sometime like Tom Cruise in Risky Business. Sometimes you got to say, what the bleep, right? And I set the alarm for like 5 a.m. and I went down there and I ran that 50 miles like my life depended on it, because it did. And when I finished, some guys going, Bradley, what's going on between your thighs? There's all this red up there. All that poison oak was coming down my legs. But I ran that 50 miles. And then the next week, I'm down in the financial district. I'm looking people in the eyes again. I'm standing straight. I'm starting to get my confidence back. Big deal. So that's what I would tell people when they're in their low. If you have been putting something off or something that you go after that's out of your comfort zone, that's a big goal, just do it, man. And even if I hadn't finished the 50 milers, just the fact that I got out there and attempted it would have had me standing taller anyway.
Well, there's so much to unpack there, Bill. Like, yeah, I think when I think of your story, your evolution, to get your confidence back, to face that fear, to line up to a 50 miler, every 99.99% of people would have dropped out having poison oak on their junk, guaranteed. but go back to younger Bill. Were you always this guy, or is this an evolution that you came across through your years to develop this grit?
I was afraid of everything. And that was the thing. I was always afraid of everything. And it was like, I got cut from the, like 9th grade. A lot of stuff hit the fan because I got cut. I was playing the ball sports, right? You know, just a traditional young man playing all the ball sports, you know, baseball, football, basketball. And then in 9th grade, I never really grew, right? You know, and everybody else grew. Everybody's all of a sudden is a head taller than me. And I get cut from the, you know, I didn't play on the football team. And I got cut from the basketball team, which was that was devastating to me. I remember running out of the gym like crying, man, and thinking like, man, I'm in 9th grade and I cried running out of the gym after, you know, you put your finger on the wall and you're looking at all the names on there and your name's not there. I'm like, oh my God, what happened to my name? There must have been a typo. But anyway, so yeah, I got cut there. Then I went out for baseball, got cut there. And all these sports, and with running, I'd ran in 7th grade, even in 8th, and I was one of the tops in the county in 7th grade when I was the same height as everybody. And then in 8th grade, that's when everybody grew and I didn't grow. Same with 9th grade. And I couldn't even make the top 3 on the, you know, like it was a 3 laps. It was a 13:20 back in the day. I couldn't even make the top 3 on the team. So I just quit running. So basically, whenever I got cut or anything negative happened, I just quit. Automatic. It's like, I'm never playing that again. I'm never running again. I'm never doing this. And in my head, so in 10th grade, after I got cut from all the ball teams and I couldn't make the top 3 in running, which was like being cut in my head. And so I went out for soccer. And it was new to our school and they didn't cut. I was so happy not to get cut. But I had no passion for it. I was no good at it. You know, I played it And then a guy who got cut on the baseball team with me. All of us who got cut, we all just quit baseball, right? You know, but one guy practiced all summer, right? Or whatever for the next year. And then he went out for the sophomore team and he made it. And I was like, my eyeballs went like this. I was like, holy, he didn't quit like the rest of us. He kept going. And so then the next year, my buddy, they were still running track. Mostly my friends were the guys running track. And I went for a run with him in Lake Tahoe. He asked me to go for a run. You know, I think it was my sophomore year during the summer. We were up there for a couple of weeks, you know, and he asked me about that. And so I went for a run with him. It was like 8 miles and I hadn't even run in like years. Right. But, you know, I go, oh yeah, okay, let's go. And so we ran. I remember we ran 4 miles out. I had to take a bus back because I couldn't make it back. I couldn't even walk. I was so beat up from not running. And so I took a bus back to the hotel, you know, but I had run again and then all my buddies. So I went out for track in 11th grade and I was like, now I'd grown too. I was a foot taller and I was one of the, you know, I got 5th in the county in like the 800, you know, and then I was rolling. Now I was like, and I told myself, I'm never quitting again, ever. And I've held myself to that right now, still going. So I'm still like that guy, you know, in 11th grade, you know, who wasn't going to quit because, you know, he couldn't, whatever happened in junior high, you know.
Runners, your gear is holding you back. If you're struggling with chafing, useless pockets, and materials that feel too technical and just don't keep up with your training, let me introduce you to Path Projects, offering a complete line of gear and apparel built by runners, for runners, and today's modern endurance athletes that want to perform, train hard, and look damn good doing it. Say goodbye to chafing with Path's independent suspension design. They've separated the baseliner from the short, virtually eliminating all the rubbing and movement that traditional running shorts have. A simple design feature that makes all the difference. Less movement plus performance fabrics equals no burn, no chafing, no hot shower screams. My all-time Path favorite, their best-selling Graves PX running short built with Toray Prime Flex has a great feel while being extremely durable and has an unbelievable amount of storage. I've been able to carry gels, my iPhone, my car keys, and even hang a clip-on water bottle off the waist. And they're built to last. Path's Tahoe CL baseliners offer an all-season performance. The cool light mesh is for the extremists. A bird's eye mesh fabric that's ultra light, super wicking, and insanely breathable. Comfort means everything. And they offer personalized performance. With Path baseliners, you have the choice of 2 fabrics and 4 lengths. 3, 5, 8-inch, and full length, which allows you to dial in a baseliner based on the current weather condition and your personal preference. And with the Path's Graves PX shorts, you have the choice of 2 fits, classic and relax, and 2 lengths, which give you the flexibility to match your short to the effort. With the right gear from Path, you can focus on your effort and getting after it. Check them out, pathprojects.com, and you can use the code TRP10 for 10% off your order for a limited time. For sure. And I think when I read on your story, and for listeners, Epic Bill has done all the major adventures. These adventures that would scare most of us from even contemplating applying to race. Bill has done them multiple times. And it's that spirit of not quitting, Bill, because I think that's probably what goes against the, I would say, standard industry model of running, is that the runners, they'll sign up for their event, and if they just miss what their expectation is by 1 little second, 1 minute, they quit. But what you're saying here is a spirit of not quitting. And when you look at your resume from the races that you've done and you've lined up for, would you say that that's given you that secret sauce? Is that the secret advantage? And that's how you found the joy of these endurance events? Is this the not quitting?
I think I just like really, really hard things, like really hard. And I remember cause I remember the reason I did an Ironman and started the triathlons because I'd been drinking I partied for like 10 years through my 20s. And then I remember I went to a Tony Robbins seminar and he just flipped my switch, man. I quit drinking within like the next year. I started running. It flipped a switch in me, man. And and I've been rolling ever since, but it was that, I went out and started training to run, and that was huge for me, that I had done that. But I eventually went back because I'd watched on Wide World of Sports the Iron Man, and I go, that looks so hard. That's crazy. That's crazy. And so of course, after I started my comeback and I started running and stuff, I got kind of introduced to seeing the triathlons, but I didn't know how to swim. Only as a kid, like you get like 2 weeks, we call it is park and rec training out here, just like you can make it across the pool, and not drowned. That's the only swimming I had in my background. So
the basics,
the basics.
Tread water. You're treading water.
So, I know. So I really learned to swim to do an Ironman. And, and that, like when I did my first Ironman, and that's because it's hard. It wasn't because I thought I was going to make all these. I actually thought I had really good talent at making all these things when I first started doing all this, because I was making them all. And then I got to like the toughest things in the world or right there. And then I started not making them.
Well, some you didn't make, but some you did. And, when I think of the extremes for our Renegade listeners, there's two events that are the most extreme that you've done. You've done the Arrowhead 135. I think you said 12 times, going for your 13th next year.
Yes. Never quit.
Never quit. And then you've done the Badwater 135 multiple times, and not just one Badwater. You decided to run it there and back. And then a quadruple Badwater. This is in Death Valley, from the lowest part on the North America up to the highest point in Mount Whitney, correct?
Yes.
Compare and contrast these two epic adventures, the heat and the cold. Which one do you like better?
Well, I was really successful in the heat, right?
Okay.
But when you do the Badwater race, which I've done twice, or you do the double, or you do the quadruple, you always have a van next to you, right?
Okay.
So the van, you're not allowed to get into it when it's moving, but if it parks, you got ice in there, your crew's in there. They can turn the air conditioning on, you put your face up against the vent, The odds are, you'd have to try really hard to die when you got a crew really close by,
That's a good point.
I mean, people do die in Death Valley, and they turn up and they look like jerky.
That's right.
I don't want to be known as jerky boy. but you have a crew there, so the odds are you're not going to get in super big trouble. But in Arrowhead, you start and you'll go 12, 14 hours to the next checkpoint. And I've gone 10 hours and never seen anybody at minus 35 degrees. And if you screw up, you're going to at least lose some parts. I mean, it's so cold, that when I went there the first year, I thought I was on the moon, man. It was that because I'm in California. When I went out there, I couldn't believe it. My hands froze, like in my gloves. And I was like, these are the best gloves in Santa Rosa REI. How could my hands be freezing?
Well, how did a guy from California pick International Falls in January? What was the allure of that race? Was that something that you heard about, something that was always interesting to you? Like when you first heard of Arrowhead 135, what drew you to it?
I think I had done, I went and did, finish my first 50 miler. Then I finished my first 100 miler, in California, and I didn't make Western States. And that's when it was 2-to-1 odds. And I didn't know what I was doing. It got hot. It was 105 that year. And I didn't know they said, I don't think they knew anything about hyponatremia either, because they said, if it gets hot, you need to drink a lot. And that's the wrong thing to say to me, because I had a Camelback, and when it was hot, I just go, and then what I did was I got hyponatremia. I made it like to the 65 miles. And then I was like, I was having all kinds of problems with my body, man, all kinds of cramping and all kinds of stuff. And I wasn't able to finish Western States, but I went down and did one right in my area that's actually has more climbing and elevation than Western States. I did it 2 months later. So when I made that, I said, okay, well, that makes up for my loss of Western States, because it actually has more climbing. But and when you're talking to these people, they're like, I know it, when you go to these ultras, you hear about other ultras, and somebody was talking about the one in Alaska. And I was like, the Susitna in Alaska. I go, oh, that sounds great. Because after I made that 100-miler, I was like all addicted. I'm like, I love these 100-milers. And so, I went up to Alaska, and it was a Susitna 100. And the first year I didn't finish it either. It was really cold. Both years I did it, it snowed a lot, which is really, really difficult, with all the snow on the ground. And so I made it like 75 miles. I didn't make it. I was just frozen basically. I didn't know what I was doing in that cold and blizzard and all kinds of stuff. I remember the guy who was with me dropped out, and I'm like, holy shoot, man, I don't even know.
You're left alone in Alaska.
I don't even know what I'm doing in this blizzard. Anyway, the second year I did it, I remember, so I made it 75 that year. The second year I did it, I made it to like, where was that? 85 miles. And it was blizzardy, man. It was really tough conditions, right? And I made it in 85 miles, and I was redlining it all the way to the 85-mile checkpoint, because I knew what time the cutoff was, right? And I'm going all the way through the night, and I'm chugging Red Bulls. I was all like, Red Bull's gonna sponsor me, and I'm chugging Red Bulls all the way there, trying to stay awake, because I kept nodding off. I'm going through this freaking blizzard, nodding off. I go, you can't nod off in a blizzard. That's how you're gonna die. And I just kept pushing, and I pulled into that 85-mile checkpoint with a minute to go, right? And the lady looks at me who runs that checkpoint. I go, I made it. She goes, yeah. With a minute, I said, a minute to spare. She goes, you know what that minute's for, Bill? It's for leaving, not for coming.
Oh, no.
I said, well, can I go down? I got to close my eyes just for a minute. I know that, like if I could roll my eyes back into my head, I could stop the nods, because I was nodding off something terrible at that point, So I went and pulled in, she said, okay. And so I went in there, I closed my eyes. I did this and, got like just maybe a couple minutes sleep. Then I got up and I went for the door, and I could feel all that Red Bull just like coming up, man. And I push open the door, and I start puking Red Bull out on her porch. I'm just like blowing it out like The Exorcist, right? And it's so cold that the lady's right behind me sweeping it off with a broom.
It's freezing in the air.
As I'm puking it up. Yeah. And then it was like, I went and I knew I couldn't go right then. I mean, I was really in bad shape. So I went back in. I said, I'm just going to close my eyes for a couple hours or whatever. I think I might have closed my eyes for like 4 hours. And then I called that Rita, because I really hated not finishing. And I said, I'm just going to go out and finish this unofficially. She's the race director up there, and it's still like this big blizzard out there, and it's like white out, and and I still barely know what I'm doing. And I said, I'm going to finish this off. And she says, well, Bill, the race is officially over. We're going to all be at the award ceremony. So if you go out there, you're on your own. And so I go out into this blizzard. She goes, nobody's going to come looking for you if you get lost. And I go out, I got 15 miles to go. And it's like I said, the snow's blowing sideways. And the trail markers were like these little paper plates, that would have an
Oh.
arrow on it, And so when you come to a Y in the road, and so I'm up there, I come up to the paper plate, I got to wipe this off and go, this is really important because nobody's going to come looking for me. So anyway, I made it. I pulled into and I know you do this. I mean, I definitely think about at the end of one of these, what I'm going to eat afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a little restaurant out there in the middle of nowheres by the finish line that had the best hamburgers. And all I could think about was eating one of those giant hamburgers. I was so sick of trail food, And I remember I came up to the checkpoint. There was nobody around. I go, I think this is where the finish line was. And I pull my GoPro out and I'm filming myself. And then I go into the little restaurant. And the lady looks at me and she goes, "You must be Bill." And I go, "How did you know that? Rita told us you might be coming." And then she goes, "Great job." And everybody in the restaurant gives me a nice ovation. And I had my own little award ceremony there. I was like choking up, man. I was like, holy cows, these guys are great. I was 6 hours after the cutoff.
6 hours.
But I finished.
How was that burger too? Was it everything you dreamed
Oh
of?
man, it was huge. It was great. It was Alaskan. Everything's big up there. Anyway, but that's where I heard about Arrowhead. They go, "You think this is cold? This is nothing compared to this race in Minnesota." It's called, and it had only been going on a few years at that point. They go, "It really is cold out there." I go, "You're kidding me," because I'm kind of in southern Alaska where the Susitna was, and this is northern Minnesota, and it's like a wet cold compared to a dry cold. I mean, it just, yeah. When I went out to Arrowhead, it was like, this is where cold to the bone was invented, man. It had to be that saying because it was so
Absolutely.
cold. Where are you from anyway?
Well, I'm just from Ontario, Canada, so we're closer to Detroit,
cold.
Michigan. It can get cold in the winter, but I've been in northern Ontario. I've been in this place called Red Lake, Ontario. It's like 3 hours north of the road, and cold, you can't even imagine the cold. And growing up in Canada, I was used to cold. I went to northern Ontario. I couldn't even imagine this cold. And I watched your movie and I was cold the entire time watching you out on that trail. And so many questions because you've done it so many times. So you've probably seen the trail in so many different types of conditions. What's the easiest type of snow to run on? And what was the most difficult type of snow that you encountered at Arrowhead?
So we all talk about it, right? That's what we talk about. What the sweet spot is. The sweet spot is between -10 and +10, in my opinion.
Okay.
Where the trail, it's a snowmobile trail. So if there's been, if there had been no snow for a little bit and you get that -10 to +10, that is the best. That's, in our opinion, is the best conditions.
Okay.
So probably the worst for me is the blizzard when it's, when you got this much footage and your feet are sliding on every step. I mean, it's really, really brutal for me, but the cold, the cold can kill you, right?
Yes.
When it's warm enough to snow, you're not going to get frostbite, so that you don't have to worry about it because it's around,
Okay.
in the 20s or whatever Fahrenheit, but when it's cold and it's -30, -40, twice it's been -50 when I'm out there. And you screw up in that, you can end up, you could end up dead, man, or you could lose parts. People definitely have lost parts during that race, toes, fingers, stuff like that. I believe. I know in one of my races, somebody lost some toes.
It is amazing. It's unbelievable. And you're right. It's like that event would scare so many people away from it. But yet you embrace that fear. You've lined up 12 times and you've gone out there. And so for the listeners, Arrowhead 135, you got to drag a sled behind you with all your equipment because ideally, how long are you out there for, Bill? Like what's the cutoff?
60-hour cutoff, 60 hours.
60-hour cutoff.
And I'm
so
and I'm super fast. So I have to go through almost every night. I'm lucky if I can get an hour of sleep each night or something like that,
And what
So,
does that look
and
like? What does sleep look like when you're out there? Like, what do you actually do? Like, you pull
I
off to the
pull,
side
yeah,
and
I know. I went to Alaska literally when I heard about how dangerous this race was. They
Mhm.
go, you need to go to a survival camp, right?
Okay. Yeah. It's a good idea.
Because I didn't know much about bivvying in the snow, which is basically camping in the snow. And so I went up there and I don't even remember we just spent the night outside, but I don't remember all the stuff I learned from the guy except one thing. He said, Bill, you got to get in your sleeping bag when you still can. Because if you get super cold, you start shaking like this and you can't even open the zipper, to your
Right.
sleeping bag. And I remember that. And that first year I went up there and and at night, it's another level, man. These guys are all like, most of them are from the cold air areas. There's 3 or 4 of us who come out from the warmer areas and do it, but most are from colder areas. And, but I remember like, that first year I did it, I went all the way. I got to the first checkpoint and I think I'd made everything up to that point, right? Remember you're talking about like I failed so many things and I think I'd made everything up to that point. And I get to that first checkpoint and the guy goes, they didn't have cutoffs when I did it the first year. And I'm there and the guy goes, and I'm getting ready to go. And he goes, nobody has ever left this late and made it. I go, well, I'm going to be the first.
Someone has to be the first. Why
Somebody
not?
has to be the first. So I go out there and I mean, it's night and it's dropping and I'm by myself and it's like minus 35 and it is cold, like something else, man. I remember, and that's where I was telling you, like my hands were frozen. But now I had the hand warmers in my hand. So I was gripping those with the death grip, and I had a GPS or whatever. So roughly I had the ones, and I had like
Mhm.
multiple of them. And I got out to where I roughly thought the 73-mile checkpoint was. And, I knew it was, they said it's this cafe out there. And I go, okay, it's this cafe. And so I see this cafe now and I run up to it, I unhook my sled. I run up to this cafe and it's dark and there's no cars in the parking lot. And I'm like really late at night, right? I'm like, I don't know what the cutoff is now. It's like 4 PM. And I'm like 10 o'clock at night. I show up there. And I'm like, and the thing's all dark and I'm knocking on all the windows and I'm going like, oh my God, they left me. They left me. And then I'm so cold though. And I'm like bonked, and I'm like, I start to shake and I go, okay, I remember the rule, number 1 rule, get in your sleeping bag while you still can. So I ran over my sled. I ripped my sleeping bag out. I'm shaking like this. And I go, you got to get in it. You got to get that zipper open. Then I get in, pull the sleeping bag over my head, and I'm hyperventilating. I'm go, come on, you big baby, you're in the sleeping bag. Quit hyperventilating. and I go, and then I'm like, okay, I quit now. That's what I said to my own head. And then about I laid in that sleeping bag for about 3 hours, and I heard a guy yell who I'd been with earlier in the race. He says, hey, Bradley, is that you sleeping in that sleeping bag? He goes, you want to come into a nice warm cabin? I go, no, I really like this ice covered parking lot. And so it was like a quarter mile, but you know what I mean? At night, and dark, and they told me, and I thought it was in that cafe, but it's actually in a cabin near that cafe. Now
I
it's
see.
really marked well, all this stuff, but back then it wasn't marked that well. And yeah, and I went in there and I remember my family was all upset because they had me as lost on the trail for that 3 hours I was sleeping in the parking lot. Everybody was mad at me, man. And it was like, and I said, well, obviously I don't quit. So I'm going back. Just don't track me next year. You won't have anything to worry about.
Well, Well, Bill, describe like in a 100-mile race. I've only attempted 100-miler because I love to sleep and I'm afraid of the dark. So that's my Achilles heel. But tell us, like, you're in Minnesota now. You're out hiking. You're working hard. You're pulling your sled, and now dark comes early.
Oh,
And there can't be many runners by you. You got to be by yourself out there. How scary is it in the dark in the woods? Are you afraid like there's like going to be a timber wolf that runs and chases you down? Like where's your mind going?
yeah. So you do hear the wolves howling out there at night. And, but what I learned was that as when I was studying this, that there had never been an attack on a person by a wolf, even though
Okay.
Hollywood makes these movies,
Of course.
but there
Yes.
had never been an attack. People have had where they got the wolf prints around their sleeping bags when they're sleeping,
The wolf's like,
and,
what's this
and
person
so
doing?
that's what was in my mind that, they're not going to eat me, but it was like, yeah, I've gone 12 hours and not seen another soul.
12
And
hours in the dark too, right?
yeah. And I'm more afraid of getting lost. That's what I'm afraid of after my pep talk I got up in Alaska. So yeah, I'm like, fact is that, I think my second year I did it, I left that checkpoint, or maybe it was the 1 year I'm talking about where I made it into the second, into the parking lot. But
Mhm.
earlier in that race, it came to a fork in the road, a fork in the trail. And like I said, they're not marked real good there. They weren't back in the day, I mean. And it's a fork, and I go, all right, there's 100 racers in front of me. I got to be able to figure out which way they went because I'm in dead last, right? I got my headlamp. I'm looking down at the ground. I'm like doing, checking like I'm some sort of a, guide back in the Western days, trying to track somebody down or something. And then I go, okay, it looks like they went to the left. I start to go to the left and I hear a snowmobile coming up the road, right? And now he's like a really good friend of mine, but he yells, he goes, "Hey, wrong way."
Oh no.
And I go, well, better lucky than good. So I didn't even make it like 5 feet down that trail, and first guy I seen in 12 hours. And I also had dropped, like, I lost a glove out. I really didn't know what I was doing back then. Now I'm so experienced, but I'd lost a glove out there because I was so delirious. And then I had a spare pair, and I put my spare pair on, and then I lost that. And then I was down to two gloves that were the same, they were like left-handed gloves.
You don't make this easy, Bill. You don't make it easy on yourself.
And my buddy pulls up after he told me, he goes, "Hey man, did you lose some gloves?" He goes, "It looked like you're having a yard sale out there." I go, "Yeah, I did." And so he gives me my two gloves back. But it was, yeah, I mean, I was really delirious when I was going through that night, man. I just don't like to quit. I'd give it everything I got, so.
How do you manage the cold? So when my mind went when I watched your video that year, I think the one from the video, it was super cold. How do you keep your feet warm? Like, are you wearing layers, like double socks, triple socks? What kind of shoes do you wear? Do you wear your favorite trail running shoes, or are you all gearing up specially for that race? Like, what does it look like?
I was wearing Hokas, but
Okay,
they're, they're waterproof ones,
Okay.
so, what they're made of for the waterproof. And, but basically the theory is with us who are on foot, keep moving,
Just
right?
keep
That's how
moving.
you're like a layer or two layers below where you would belong if you're standing, at least a layer for sure. You can't sweat. If you sweat, you could die, right? If you get wet and then and then you get cold and it freezes, you could die. But, and that's where people lose toes and stuff. They start sweating, they get their feet wet, and then it warms up during the day, and then it gets cold at night. And that's how you lose a toe and stuff, So, but, yeah, so basically yeah, so what was your question again?
No, it's just like, how do you like prepare for the cold? So like you have Hoka running shoes that are waterproof. How many pairs of socks are you wearing? Or to your point, what you're saying is that you're going at a pace that as long as you keep moving, you're warm, but you're not sweating. Is that how you're handling it? So you don't actually have to worry
The
too
fir-
much about the multiple
Yeah, the
layers and stuff
first
like that?
couple years we would really bundle up tight because nobody knew what they were doing. And we would sweat and we'd
Okay.
get into the first checkpoint and we all had to dry our clothes. They
Jeez.
had
Okay.
dryers there and we would all dry our clothes and then we would leave and but they don't use the dryers anymore and the clothes are much better and the
Mm,
socks are much better. But that first year I got trench foot, or the second year when I made it 98 miles, which is my record, my furthest I've made it. But I got trench foot because I didn't change my socks. And I
okay.
kept, I was just so close to the cutoff. I didn't want to, I don't know, just stupid. I didn't think it was necessary. And then, then you all of a sudden your socks are wet and you end up with, just all the skin had peeled off my feet. And I pulled, and
Lord.
it's in the movie where the doctor asked me about quitting, right? He says, I can't tell you to quit, but I would recommend that you quit because your feet are a mess, right? And I'm like, well, is that an order or is that just a suggestion? He said, that's a suggestion. I said, well, then tape them up because I'm going back out. Because I don't quit because I got cut in ninth grade and I cried and I'm not doing that again.
Well, what do you love most about Arrowhead 135? Like, what is it in particular that you just love?
Just a worthy opponent, man. When I was sitting there and hyper ventilating, I said, oh my God, this is such a hard race. I love to challenge myself with the hardest stuff in the world, man. I said, this is so freaking hard. It's unbelievable, as I was hyperventilating in my I couldn't wait to sign up for next year. But I love that. But I will tell you that I've been doing, because I remember I was telling you the difference between the Death Valley and here. And me and my buddies would all say it's like doing Badwater, but without the van. You'd have to do it with the cart by yourself. And so they have that. People have done that. Like 6 people have done that or something, where you pull a cart with all your survival gear across Death Valley unsupported with your water, ice, and food. And I have a short movie on YouTube right now that we called, and it got into film festivals, called Pushing Mercury. So
Okay.
we went out there with this cart and and it was like, it's been hot, man. It's hotter than when I did my quadruple Badwater and went back and forth for 3 weeks. It was only like 110 to 112 when I went out to do this pushing the cart thing. And I'm like, really, like, I told everybody a date I was doing it. I'm doing it on that date. And the news is going, that date is going to be one of the hottest days ever on earth. And I go, well, we're still doing it. Because I had a lot of confidence after doing that quadruple Badwater, but I got out there and I remember, and you could just feel it warming up as you're going, and it zoomed right past my 110. And it went up. We had a thermometer and I think it went up over 150 degrees in the sun that day. But when I was out there and my buddy goes, because I'm used to, like, you get in the van, cool off, then you go back out again. Here there's no shade, no nothing. And my buddy goes, Bill, I know where you can cool off at, man. There's a ditch up the road a little ways. Because he had tried the year before and he went out. And when you go out, it's bad. It's like you're puking, it's just a mess when you quit that thing, because we're going as hard as we can. But my buddy, he goes, there's a ditch up there that you can sit in. I go, and that's my shade? He goes, trust me, it's going to feel good. And so I'm all hot. I've been out there for like 8 hours and he shows me where the ditch is and I sit down in that ditch and all it does is puts the shade on your calves. And I go, You're right. That does feel good.
You got to find the joy in the small
Oh
things,
my
right?
God. But that was like, I made it to, I don't know what it was, like 20 miles or 20 something miles, the first checkpoint of Badwater. And, it just kept getting hotter. So I was out there. I started at 6 in the morning and it's like 3 in the afternoon. And like I said, it's just pegging past the thermometer. It's super hot, and it just like, yeah, I started throwing up, man. And then I still kept going though. And, I don't know. I got tough crew. It's like, you could do it, Bill, still. but I know I made it to where there's palm trees at the first checkpoint. I forget what it's called, but it's like 30 something miles. It's like a little hotel there. And I made it, and so I remember I got on this grass and I sat. It's like here it's like, like I said, in the sun, I'm on our thermometer, it was over like 150. And I sit out in the shade after going for 9 hours. I'm like, well, this time this really ain't doing much. And I tried to go back out and go on, but it was just brutal. And I kept telling myself, just make it till dark, just make it till dark. But I didn't do good on one of the hottest days ever on earth in Death Valley.
I can't even imagine that temperature. I can't even imagine that.
Well, put your head in the oven and you would. That's what I always say. Put your oven on and put your head in there, and that's what it feels like.
Well, how do you approach running and training in endurance sport now? You're in your mid 60s. How do you approach it now versus when you first started off, when you were in your 40s, when you were
Number one, I deny that I'm in my mid 60s. I tell myself I'm 30
perfect.
all the time. I brainwash myself. I'm big about brainwashing myself.
Okay.
So you must be talking about my dad.
That could be a nugget that I'm taking away here.
I take it real serious, man. I I just keep telling myself, you're 30, you're 30, you're 30, you're 30. You can do anything. You're at your peak. I just considered 30 around the peak, like professional athletes. A lot of them say, it seems like around 30 is their peak. So I always say I'm 30. I'm at my peak. I'm at my peak. I can do anything. I can do anything, and I just keep brainwashing myself. And I'll tell you, I was up on Aconcagua, and back then I was real business about, like, don't even joke about my age at all. 0. And so they got checkpoints as you go up that mountain, right? So it's like 30. It's the highest mountain in the Western Hemisphere. It's 29,000. Not 29. That's Everest. 22,800 feet. And like, there's like a couple checkpoints you have to go where you get a medical checkup. And I remember I pulled into one. It's like, I don't know, like 15,000 feet or something, And I pull in and the guy comes out. He's got a doctor's outfit and he looks real official. He's got a little clipboard and he asked me what my age is. He goes, "What's your age?" I go, 30. He goes, "It is not." I go, "Yes, it is."
Don't ask me again.
I've had a lot of sun. He goes, "No, this is serious medical records." And I'm going like, nobody has their IDs up here at 15,000 feet on Mount. And I said, "I'm 30. He goes, and he's like almost disgusted in me, writes 30. Writes 30 down. And then I pass all his tests, right? And I leave. And we take a couple days. We have to do acclimating and stuff. And then there's another, it's like at like 17,000 feet or something. We're up higher on the mountain, another medical. And I walk in and the same guy's there. He was filling in for somebody else. And he looks at me and he goes, "I know. 30.
You got the memo.
I got the memo. So yeah, I take that really serious, but so I honestly believe the aging thing is a lot that we don't use it. We don't use it. It really is like, I didn't used to stretch much and I became extremely stiff, like more stiff than normal. What happened was I stepped in a crevice on Denali. I stepped into a crevice the last time I went up there on my 6th attempt to climb Denali, the world's coldest mountain. and my leg went off to the side. So and my knee just like, it was killing me, and I took a couple years off and I swam. And, but when I started back up, it was like my knee really hurt. And, I started rehabbing and studying about rehabbing. And what I learned was that, you really, most stuff that people say is age is just not using it, man. That's all it is. It's not using it. So you got to use it, man. I mean, so now I don't know. People are starting to call me Gumby. You look at Gumby, he's so stretchy. No, no, that's just a joke. I'm still really stiff, but I'm better. But yeah, I think a lot of the aging thing is in your head. And so I just say I'm 30 all the time. I say I'm 30 and I say I'm Superman, and Superman can do anything. So I'm always brainwashing myself. I try and just constantly put positive things in. You see my wall behind me. This goes like all the way down, all the way over here. I look at it every morning. I don't have a TV. I look at the freaking wall. I play motivating music, motivating movies, motivating clips. Just keep brainwashing myself over and over again that I can do anything. And I'm still out there fighting the fight. Woo, woo, as a 30-year-old. Woo, woo.
There's so much truth in that, Bill. Is that what's the old saying? Like, be careful what you say to yourself because you're listening. Like, for sure. And to fill ourselves with positivity rather than the negativity that can overwhelm us sometimes.
Yeah, I think what I had heard, which I really, really believe, if you keep putting positive stuff in, positive stuff starts coming out. And if you put negative stuff in, the opposite happens. So I'm big about guarding what goes into my mind. Very big about it.
Well, there was a quote that you had from your movie, and it goes something like this. If you finish, it's freaking great. And if you don't win, it's freaking great because at least you're in the arena and you're living whatever your arena is. What does that mean to the everyday runner? What should they take away from that?
I think that I was like a normal guy. I'd been making all my races before I came to Arrowhead, right? I've had other problems since, like climbing mountains and stuff, and swimming the English Channel. That's another one I haven't had a lot of success on. But when I showed up at Arrowhead, when my sister came to me and said, "What do you think about my son? He's getting ready to graduate from film school, and a couple of his friends doing a documentary on you, And I go, well, I think that sounds terrific, right? Who wouldn't think that, And they go, and she goes, well, what's your next event? And I go, well, I got the Arrowhead race, And I remember, I'm just going to tell you something. These kids are all from LA. My sister calls me. She goes, like a couple weeks before, I looked at the long-term forecast. It's supposed to be like minus 40 degrees. You got to get somebody who lives out there to drive these kids around. They're from LA. Who's going to keep them alive? So he's actually in the movie was Fudd, who talked about like you could get your hands cut off of oh my God. But he did a great job with that. But it was like, I lost my trend there. What was I going after there? Your question?
No, you were just going after of like, if you finish, great. If you don't finish,
what great. I want to tell you was the little director, Quinn, the young director. She's like amazing. And she came up to me and she goes, because people would always ask me what I was doing next. And I'd say Arrowhead. And they go, haven't you done that before? And I go, yeah, I don't know, like this is like my second or, 2 or 3 times I've tried it. I never counted. I was just so embarrassed. Every time I didn't make it, I go home with my tail between my legs, but I was determined that I would make it the next year, but I wouldn't quit, but I wasn't going to talk about it with anybody, and then she said, Bill, you're on your 8th attempt. I go, what? I go, you got to be kidding me. She says, no, I went to the official race register and I counted up, all the different races and how many times you're in it. This is your 8th attempt. And I was like, wow, I can't believe it, And then what I found out after, that movie came out and everything was how much respect there is for you when you tee it back up and do it again and even, again, even if you do it once again after you get your ass kicked. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of respect for getting back in that arena. The Man in the Arena. I love that poem by Theodore Roosevelt. One of the years I didn't finish Arrowhead, the guy says, you need to read this Theodore Roosevelt poem, because I was so upset, and he was, and it's like talks about it's not the critic who counts, the guy who sits in the stands. It's the guys who's in the arena fighting the fight, bloody, And to this day, if I don't finish something, man, I read that a poem right away. Yeah, I'm the man in the arena. I'm fighting the fight still, There's a lot of, there's a lot of, you know, and I think you show a good lesson for everybody else, but there's a lot of stuff. People have a lot of respect for you for getting back in and not quitting more than I would have ever thought, and the people who've done the race have the most respect. Those guys who do it year after year and know what it takes, they have the most respect.
When you said that you got to mile 98 in Arrowhead,
Mm-hmm.
what are the one or two things that you have to do to get to that finish line? And what is it going to feel like when you cross that finish line, Bill?
I know I'll just tell you that part. When I cross that finish line and I yell at the top of my lungs, woo, woo, you're going to hear it in Ontario. Woo,
I will.
woo.
I might be there with you, Bill. I might come with you. You never know.
I love it. Woo, woo. That's an experience. Well, you're already used to the cold. For us Californians, that's a hell of an experience. But I think that, I have learned that your life's not over when you don't finish something. I used to think like my life was over. And then, it was so devastating to me. And then, but what I learned was like, okay, learn from it, write your notes after the race and go out there. And the last couple times I went out there, I actually stayed there. When I did that race, I stayed there for like 6 weeks. I was out there all through Christmas. I wanted it so freaking bad. I got to get used to that cold. And I went out there and there's nobody around. I'm training almost by myself most of the time. Ken, the race director, came out a couple times and trained with me, but they all got jobs and stuff. And I'm just staying in this little hotel and getting out and training all the time. And, but I had like but what I learned from that was actually when I went out there, I trained too much because I had nothing else to do. Even the one year when it was Christmas, and you'll see that in the movie, but it shows like, all our family Christmas is how we're always together. And I'm out there in this little hotel and it's made, these hotels are for the tourists or in the summer. Nobody's there in the winter, cause it's so cold. And I go, well, at least the hotel owners in the hotel, right? Going through Christmas, right? And he goes to me, he goes, hey, Bill, can you keep an eye on the place? We're going to go spend Christmas with my son. I was like, whoa, this is really going to screw with me and give me issues. Oh man.
Wasn't there a movie about someone who was going to caretake a hotel for somebody? Wasn't it The Shining?
Yeah, probably, man. But that was like, that really messed with me. Cause I think, like to go outside when it's minus 20, minus 30, minus 10, anything like that, you got to put 3 or 4 layers on, you got to dress warm to walk down the street to go to a restaurant. And it's like, so you're kind of stuck in this hotel, it's like, I really got kind of screwed up mentally. Like, like I used to think I could handle solitary confinement. Not anymore. Don't throw me in that hole. Well, I could probably work on it and get better at it. But yeah, it was tough going out there. But that part of what I did wrong was I trained too much out there because I had nothing else to do. And I'd go into the race and I'm tired. And so I think that I took this last couple years off. I didn't go out to Arrowhead. I'd burned out. I'd lost I didn't make it 6 times in a row or something. I hurt my leg on Denali and I was just kind of fried on everything, And I took a break. And I swam. I I'm not good at taking real breaks. So I started swimming and training for the English Channel because it's kind of exact opposite of doing Arrowhead. And I actually swam all the way through the winter last winter, and I've made 20 miles in the English Channel, no wetsuit, no breaks, almost 11 hours of swimming straight. You know,
Unbelievable.
you never can touch the boat. You tread, they throw your water on a rope. You know, your food and your water. And I went back training for that, and gave myself a year and a half to train for that, and I went all the way through the winter swimming in San Francisco Bay, and it drops down to like 50 degrees, and I just didn't give myself enough time to really train for the English Channel. I gave myself a year and a half, but 8 years I hadn't swam because I didn't swim as a kid. Like I told you, I didn't learn to swim till I was in my 30s, even though I'm only 30 right now. But and so it was, so I took off, and I thought I could swim in a year and a half. Basically, I couldn't get in shape good enough to make the 6-hour swim in the bay. You had to do it in 60 degrees or under, no wetsuit, 6 hours straight. I tried it 2 weekends in a row, only made it to 4 hours, started throwing up, couldn't make it. Just wasn't, I needed one more year probably to get all the way back in the English Channel shape. So now I'm back at Arrowhead again, but I feel smarter now. Like I'm not going to burn myself up. I've always trained too hard for everything I do, I mean, I'm not good at doing the aerobic training. I like racing my time, racing people. I just like that. I like all that. But now I'm making myself go slow. I don't know. I think I'm going to be a machine. I think I'm going to be a different person when I go out there this year, just different.
Love it. I love it. And, that's a good insight. Like to show up at a start line overtrained, you're just asking for trouble in
Oh my
shorter
God.
distance events. I can't even imagine in the long events because that wall's going to come and it's going to find you and it's going to hit you and it's going to gut punch you. And it takes, like you said, a lot of resilience to get back up and face it again. I had a couple just fun questions for the audience just to get to know you a little bit. What's your favorite type of running shoes? Do you have
I
a pair?
run in Hokas, man.
You love Hokas?
Yeah, I like them. They're wider, they're cushiony. My buddy runs in those damn sandals, man. And he keeps telling me how you got to get sandals, Bill. It's so great for your feet. I go, I got the tenderest feet, like Bill, so you get the correct. And he's in International Falls. That's my friend out there. And he's running. You see there's snow around. He's running in his sandals.
Oh,
I go,
geez.
that's what I love about you, one doggy, but I really like the cushion on these Hokas.
It's true.
And so, I've been
sandal running is fun though. Sandal running is fun. And there's a good company not too far from you. It's in Santa Cruz, and it's called Shama Sandals. Josh, he makes the best
he probably
sandals
bought
in the
them.
world.
I'm really a super tenderfoot. So I've tried the 5-finger shoes.
Yes, the 5
I can only go to the beach and do it. That's the only place I can go. It's because I didn't walk around as a kid with bare feet. I hear that's like part of the secret is you got to walk around a lot with bare feet as a kid. So
toughen
you don't
them
have
up
the
a little
tenderfoot.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
I
right.
definitely have when I was doing the triathlons and I have to do the transition from the swim to the bike. Oh my God, if it was like gravel or something, I was like, oh.
Yeah. They're like, I thought you were a tough triathlete. What do you mean you can't walk on the gravel?
I did walk on the gravel, but it killed me.
Well, here's one for you. Have you ever tried the toe socks, or are you like a regular sock guy?
No, I do. I have tried the toe socks. I have wore the toe socks. I've wore the toe socks in International Falls.
Okay.
I was doing the double, like wearing 2 pairs of socks, and the inside one was the toe socks, and I like those. But then now I don't know. I've kind of just gone to ones that have like some sort of a mix with the wool and all that. And that I seem like I'm doing okay, without the toe socks, but I might go back to the toe socks. I don't know. You know what I mean? I always have that in the repertoire to put those on. And they're in my sled too, in case I get blisters on my toes somewheres.
Mix it up a little bit. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about the your Alaskan hamburger. What's your favorite post-race meal? Like, what's your go-to?
It probably is that cheeseburger and
Is that
fries and like a big
cheeseburger?
giant freaking milkshake or something.
Ooh, that sounds
Because
good.
usually I'm starving myself to get my weight down for Arrowhead. I've left the English Channel after taking my fifth attempt, and been 235, and then just said, that's it, man. I'm going for Arrowhead next year. Actually, my sixth attempt, I went out there after swimming a whole year, did 10 hours in the bay, the most I'd ever done it, like 56 degrees. And I never got a chance to swim on my sixth year. It was just a really, really rough year. And I never even got out. But I was 235, and I said, I'm going to start running. I dropped, by the time I did Arrowhead the next year, I was down to 185. So
that's a
I
lot of weight to drop in a year.
Pretty much starved myself. It's not healthy what I do. I don't highly recommend it, but I do get skinny.
It can work, right? It can work. Well, here's a few episodes ago, we had Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum on. He was a world-renowned foot morphologist expert in bipedal humanoids. Okay, that's what he told us. He's passed away now, but basically he was a legit anthropologist, and he used to study Bigfoot a little bit. So he was a Bigfoot and mysterious stuff. So I'm
like the real Bigfoot,
the real Bigfoot. Yeah, like he was a real.
Good for him, man.
And it was all about footprints. So I was going to ask you, have you ever seen anything strange out there on the trails, other than the hallucinations that can come with ultra running? Anything ever strange from supernatural when you're on the trails that you experienced?
I think when I see the wolf trails, I do get nervous. There's no doubt about it. I tell myself, they haven't attacked a human. But I do get that. I've never seen a bear print out there or anything. The moose are the first year I did that's the sitting, but that's the hallucinating. The guy told me, you got to watch out for the moose, man. The moose, it's been a bad snow year. And if you see the moose dangerous on the trail, he goes, I don't care if you got to go around them by 100 yards. I don't care if it's up to your neck. And so, like you said, I really wasn't seeing moose footprints, but I was seeing moose at night. I go, there's a freaking moose. And it would always be just a bush or something,
It's amazing we can get stuck in the brain, right? Amazing.
Oh, my God. Yes.
Well, I know we're just here at time, Bill. I got one last question for you, and then a couple of departing questions. But here, the one last question for you here is, for our listeners, Bill, the renegades, the folks listening, they're runners, they're dreamers, they're people facing their own battles. What's one key takeaway that you hope they carry away from the epic Bill Bradley story after hearing your journey? And where could they find more about you?
I think it's like, don't play it safe in life, man. Don't get to the end and have had a boring life where you played everything safe, I think it's go after that big dream race, that if you could be guaranteed you would finish, that you would do. And that's the one you go after, and you just keep going at it. And he might be talking with you someday about how you're on your 13th attempt at whatever your race is. But yeah, that's what I highly recommend is, and go out of that comfort zone, man. That comfort zone is boring. It's just a spiral downhill. Keep pushing out of that comfort zone. Keep going a little further. I was trying to always qualify for for Hawaii in the Ironman, and every year I would go to Canada and do the Canadian Ironman, and every year I wouldn't qualify, and I'd go home all depressed. And it was like, and then I remembered when my sister had said that about doing something that and that 50 miler, and I remember thinking like, when I did my first thing, when it was out of my comfort zone to finish that 100 miler, finish my first, Ironman, even my first half Ironman, it's a big freaking deal when you push out of that comfort zone, big freaking deal. It's a huge deal. I highly recommend you do it. because when you finish it the first time, it's really, really special because you're like, oh my God, I'm an Ironman, or I'm a marathoner, or I'm, whatever it is, a 50 miler. It's just so special that first time. There's something about once you can do it, that it's not as special, I mean, I went
Right.
over and did the Ultraman in Hawaii, which was like some of the best athletes I've ever been with. There's only like 50 of us doing it. There was Olympian and there was all this other stuff. And I made it the first year, and it was a huge deal to me. And I made it the second year, and I love all the camaraderie. And I made it the second year. I go, okay, next.
Next.
Because when I'm in the award ceremony with one of the girls who beat me in the swim, that's a 10K swim. It's like a 3-day event, and it's like a 190-mile bike total or something. Anyway, it's like 2.5 Ironmans total. But she
What?
had done the English Channel, and she only beat me by 5 minutes in the swim. And I'm like, she did the English Channel? She only beat me by 5 minutes. Next up, man, English Channel it is. I'm signing up for the English Channel.
That's how Bill gets his ideas, his next adventures. He's listening to the adventures of the adventurers at the races that he's at. I love that
Because they're the
concept.
craziest, man. They got the coolest things they're doing,
That's amazing. And Bill, where can folks find more about you, your movie, your story, your journey?
I'm putting a lot on Instagram right now at Epic Bill Bradley, but also the movie is called Epic Bill. It won 2 film festivals. It's really, really doing well. Very inspiring. It had a good run on public TV, PBS, and now it's on Amazon and not YouTube, Amazon and Apple TV. And and like I said, it's like we cut it down it was an hour and a half. We cut it to 57 minutes to get it on nationally on PBS. And it's really tight, and my life ain't boring at all. The boring spots got cut out. But in that, yeah, those are my 2 main things. So
That's fantastic. And Bill, I started by saying it was tongue in cheek that folks have called you the biggest failure in endurance sport, but you're not a failure whatsoever. You are a beacon of positivity, of hope, inspirational. Watching your epic Bill over Christmas lit a fire inside of me that started asking myself questions. Can I actually do what Bill's doing? Could I do Arrowhead 135? Could I attempt a Badwater? And I think that's the epitome of your story, is pushing out beyond one's comfort zone. So you are everything that's right. You're, to me, the biggest success in endurance sport. And we can't thank you enough for joining us on this episode.
Thank you so much. But yeah, I would say that I had to percolate on that failure thing for a while. And then I said, you know what? If you got to be good at something, I am good at failing, but I'm also good at showing up the next year. So that's the key that has to go with failing, is you can't quit when you fail. And so it's just another attempt. It's just another attempt when you keep going back out there.
That's a wonderful way to look at it. Another attempt. I love it. Bill, thank you very much.
Renegade Podcast Power. Woo, woo. Great job. Thank you very much, Todd. Woo, woo. You're the man.
We thank you for listening to the Renegade Podcast. Each episode, we dare to practice the lost art of conversation to better understand this thing we call life and the human connection that we have with running and endurance sport. If you enjoy the Renegade Podcast, could we ask for a favor? Head on over to our YouTube and click subscribe, and like our podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Your engagement helps keep the Renegade Podcast growing and going. If you have a show idea, a comment, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, renegadepodcast@gmail.com. That's RUNEGADE podcast@gmail.com. We have a great list of guests coming up that we're looking forward to sharing another conversation with you. Head on over to our link tree, check out our sponsors, our friends of the podcast. We have great discount codes that, thanks to them, they're offering you, the Renegade listeners, to save some money on the best running gear, apparel, fuel, and nutrition. We thank you for listening. And remember, in a world of runners, be a renegade.